for whatever reason, Cloud not being here today, or at least for this particular map, I think Greenleaves is definitely the team that could be the X factor here, depending on how this particular lineup works.
You do see Far East Society just going to go ahead and roll out on a Sombra. I mean, do you even call it Sombra Goats at this point? It more or less is. It's a 3-2-1, and I like the dive tanks that they're running, and very nice connection onto the back line. The Sleep and Biotic Grenade did not end up slowing down Far East Society at all, who end up getting the first cap.
And the initiative here very important for Far East Society, where they know there's a lot of DPS members on the side of Greenleaves. If the game gets slowed down too much where they can't engage and Greenleaves are all around them, that's how you're going to lose if you are playing that 3-2-1 team. So Far East Society now taking that first fight, leading on the EMPL charge most importantly, and are ticking up on percentage.
That's the one that really still gives them a big fighting chance, especially against the likes of these, of the Farah and Mercy is what I'm trying to say. But meanwhile, Aros has managed to find Pocky around the side. That is a huge pickup, just completely slows down Greenleaves.
Speaking of slowing down, taking down Red Evil's great. He's on 90%, so there's not going to be an EMP this fight. However, Greenleaves kind of have to back out themselves, so there is a slight 6v5 while Pocky's back in. They can't afford to lose anyone else for now.
They need to be very careful with that. It is a delicately balanced thing, because Far East Society can also just give this fight some space and wait for Red Evil, who's by now already realistically back in the mix. That's going to be it.
Good cancel.
Coalescence getting cancelled by Pocky, and now Iris picked off as well, but it ends up at least being a 1-for-1. You'll certainly feel the lack of a healer, but Red Evil comes in with the EMP. 10 is a sitting duck without that recall. Snarrow will trade one back here as Satrok has slept for the meantime, and now the counter EMP comes in. Red Evil gets picked off, and Greenleaves have found a bit of a second win for themselves. Gonna look to secure this point now.
Satrok being hacked out as well means no Primal Rage. It's going to end up going down. And Fearless, unfortunately, probably not going to be using Sound Barrier here. Far East Society just going to back out eventually, try and get as much percentage ticked up as possible. Still a very decent lead. Greenleaves have a deficit they have to climb back from still.
Looking like they'll just barely round the bend of the 80% mark, and hey, you'll take that. That puts you into one fight territory, and now they only need to build up for that one fight.
Now this is where, okay, they have a decent string of ultimates here. Don't quite have the next EMP, but with the rally coming up as well, that's 4 that you can work with. It's a lot of HP. There isn't going to be a counter EMP. There isn't going to be an EMP from Greenleaves yet. There isn't going to be the Rocket Barrage either. This could be a potential fight win for Far East Society where they can take this one, already 82%, force that 99 overtime, and that would be ideal, but they lose a member.
Yeah, it's already really rough. The self-destruct was committed. It actually ends up getting a trade. Xerathi does have the res. Ooh, Pulse Bomb gets eaten by Aros as well here, so Far East Society still in this if they want to be. It is a 5v6 still, but they've got some ultimates to lean on. They decide they want to press into it. Hack on Aros, though, means he's going to get very swiftly demaxed, and Satrok has had a hard time finding targets. They'll finally find Hoshimi, but they're starting to run out of gas here.
That's actually a decent trade for them. They still have the rally to go through, so if they just live long enough here, double support ultimates did get used, they can use the EMP. Red Evil has it now, and they can win with it.
Oh, Satrok able to get the follow-up on Xerathi as well. So nice, having already picked off Sonaro. This ends up paying off for Far East Society. They get just enough out of everything they had. They knew how to balance that fight.
And now you also have staggered kills. Greenleaves don't have time to wait for members. You're near the 99%. Both teams has EMP, and Pocky needs to be in position to get something done.
Well, Red Evil can't get out for the meantime, but that might not be the end of the world. Pocky is going to go ahead and commit his EMP at the same time. So it's really just going to be who converts on theirs better. So far, the answer is Far East Society. Hoshimi, the nano boost, not going to be enough. Ends up crowd controlled and killed off. And Greenleaves have nothing left to go on. Far East Society going to secure the first point of Busan here.
And that really is the key member, Hoshimi, because if he goes down, that's most of your damage gone. You're not running the Widowmaker here. You are running the Faru still. There's not going to be a Reinhardt on the other end. So Far East Society, in a way, read the matchup correctly. They played the Winston very quickly as well. They came out with their own Sombra. They had a lot of different areas where they can lean into. They got that early lead in terms of percentage points, still had ultimates to bank on for the further fights, and then leaned on to the EMP towards the end, focusing down Hoshimi, who died quite a decent amount. Even the solo self-destructs being thrown out by Aros, targeting Hoshimi, gets him down, taking the fire away from Greenleaves, prevents them from really taking the win.
So now Greenleaves looking for a bit of a change of pace. Looking like they just want to run out on a full-on 3-3 goats themselves. Far East Society sticking to what's worked.
And making use of the roster here as well, unfortunately, because they are running 3 DPS members. One of them has to be on the Div, and that's going to be Pocky. Far East Society playing roughly, realistically, the same thing here. Greenleaves have a pretty decent matchup, and Far East Society, as soon as they see the Rhine from Greenleaves, they're going to change to their own Rhine, and if they get a chance to play standard 3-3, they will.
That's the thing. This is kind of a dream for them. They do not mind matching head-to-head here, and Greenleafs don't exactly walk away with too much of an ultimate lead. Nice biotic grenade as well, connecting, allows them to run down Sonairo, and Fiery Society just connecting their abilities far more effectively and cleanly in that opening skirmish.
And this is from a delay as well. This is Fiery Society having to go back to spawn, having to change members after identifying their composition, and then coming through with Greenleafs already being in a defensive position that they can work with. And for Fiery Society then to land a double Bionade, Xerafi's been chunked out, so he can't be exactly in a position to be helpful to his own team unless he wants to get taken down really quickly. And Greenleafs don't get the trades, they don't get the point either, and Fiery Society off for another lead.
Now the rotation slowly coming in from Greenleafs. A lot of work to do, a lot to make up for. Aros gets chunked out though, stuns either way. It's Sonairo who ends up getting the worst end of that deal. Satchok and Hon also got stunned, but there was just no ability for Greenleafs to follow up on it. Fiery Society kind of pick up another freebie fight where they just out-frag, and now they're going to have plenty of ultimates available for the next one.
And I'll tell you what, this may be the last week of GOATs that you'll see, but they're going to make it count. One last ride for the Fiery Society guys, and they're going to be playing aggressively here. Satchuk knows what he wants to do in a Ryan versus Ryan matchup, charges in, multiple people stunned from multiple angles as well. You saw Han got in there, another double Bionade from Iris, and Greenleafs just cannot make the trades happen. Grab comes through.
Yeah, and this is really unfortunate for Sonairo. They end up having to pump resources into him. Satchok's Shadow is a little bit ski-whiff, but they're able to make it count for something at least, able to just decide, hey, let's go past Sonairo, let's attack the rest of the team instead if he's got the nano boost on him, and Fiery Society end up having no trouble.
And this is going to be a round now where very difficult for Greenleafs to come back. This is probably that fight that if they are going to come back, has to happen now because they finally have ultimates. They've been losing all the fights up until now. Huge amount of percentage increase here for Fiery Society in terms of the objectives. So if you don't win here, it's going to go to overtime again, and Fiery Society are going to be in position to take the whole match.
There's not really a lot for Fiery Society to lean on for this. They don't quite have that sound barrier yet.
Already
a self-destruct layered forward, brilliantly placed out. And that was nicely done by Greenleafs, the shatter into the self-destruct, and Fiery Society. They knew there was nothing they could do about it. They've tried to charge up some more ult if they can for the next fight because they know that they're not winning this one.
I'll tell you what, everyone did look at the Bionade because no one looked at the self-destruct and Pocky. 3 in the pocket of him, and Fiery Society as well. Okay, 99% still a decent lead. Looked at the previous round as well. We were on Sanctuary. Fiery Society got 80% plus here. Not going to be too phased. They have ultimates coming online. Sound Barrier is going to be one of them. Greenleafs will be able to match with their own. There is only a now Graviton Surge aside from the Sound Barrier for Greenleafs, so a bit of a deficit in that mark.
Nicely placed, but tough to follow up on. The Shadow may be unnecessary. Now they've really thrown everything they have into the mix. The self-destruct forward. Fiery Society have actually drained themselves dry, but they managed to get a catch on 50. Sonairo could still turn this back around, but the Shadow does not quite connect. And now there's not a lot left for Greenleafs to go on either. Even less members than what Fiery Society have. So Fiery Society might have thrown all their ultimates in very early, but it ends up paying off barely in the pick they got on 50. Now they're going to be able to re-grab the point, and I do not see Greenleafs coming back in on this one.
And when you know it's going to be the last hand dealt out here, Fiery Society going to throw everything into the pot. They had just a little bit more in terms of the ultimate bank. They put that in there, and Greenleafs can't respond. They're going to have to fold.
Yeah, slowly but surely getting chipped away as they try and flood back into the point. They know it is a moot point. Fiery Society going to pick up the 2-0 to take Busan.
Fairly comfortable as well. Outside of a few fights where you did see Greenleafs kind of take the advantage there. They did come back. Big self-destruct chain of kills from Pocky in the middle. But outside of that, it was mostly controlled by Fiery Society. You saw how they were playing around the map, choosing the correct matchups twice in a row. First time was basically a read on the opponent. Second time was scouting, finding the opportunity to get that comp in there. And usually you would expect that team to have to swap to be at a disadvantage because they're coming into the fight late. But it just didn't seem like that mattered to them at all. They were so confident in a 3-3 mirror that they were always going to be able to take them. That's quite scary for a team like Greenleafs now, who surely you kind of have to go into this thinking you can't take this 3-3 mirror versus a team like Fiery Society. Really lean into your DPSs, lean into Hashimi, lean into 50, lean on the guys that got you here, and that's how you can still win.
Exactly. Don't try and beat them at their game. Try and beat them with yours. And it's interesting how that ultimately played out as well, because you look at the fact, like, it's not a full 100-0 there for Far East Society, but with the way it ended up playing out, they win the opening skirmish, they hold on to the point, gets to a point where Greenleaves have banked up enough ultimates to have an advantage. That's the fight they predictably win. Greenleaves immediately go back, bank up an advantage at their own before even half as much percentage has ticked up for Greenleaves. They win that fight and cap the point. Like, that on the whole is just better play, right? The ultimates are coming online sooner, they are getting a reasonable amount out of them, and they're winning those opening skirmishes to boot. That's where all those incremental differences are made. It's not like this is nail-bitingly close. It's actually quite comfortable for Far East Society.
And we'll see if they can continue that, or if Greenleaves can maybe bring things back around, because Control is only one game mode in the series so far, and the next one will be on Assaults. Let's go ahead and check that out too.
Welcome to Hanamura. This is Assault. Two teams face off as either defenders or attackers. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to capture two objectives. First A, and then B. To capture an objective, the attackers need to stand within its range for a set amount of time. Defenders can delay capture progress by also standing in range. To resume capture, the attackers must force the defenders off the objective by any means necessary. If successful, they score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. Now the fight moves to objective B. If even one attacker is on an objective when the clock runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until either team is cleared away. The round ends when the attackers capture both objectives, or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points wins.
Well, Sky Industries on the cards for map number 2 here, and we've already discussed the fact that if we do see more 3-3 mirrors, probably going to be favoring Far East Society quite heavily in that particular matchup. However, going on to Volsky, particularly point A, I think we're back in the realm of potential bunker. Also, Pharmacy plus Widowmaker is a big pick for particularly Greenleaves on that part of the map, but I think that's where they can find a decent win. A point of Volsky is going to be somewhat tough on paper for Far East Society, so I'll be interested in knowing and seeing rather how they want to handle that in terms of how they pick their compositions and how they perceive the matchups.
That's the thing, I'm curious about both their offense and their defense. Like, we talk about the offensive picks, we talk about the Pharaoh Widowmaker, but also on the defense, we maybe want to see them looking at things like Orisa and Hog and stuff they've played, but again, not as effectively as their 3-3 so far. So assuming they will run it, because it's not like it's compulsory, but it's probably the better way to go on balance. It's like, is it going to be better than what it was last week, or is this where windows start to open for Greenleaves?
And I think part of this is going to come down to Far East Society, not necessarily giving up A, but just understanding this isn't going to be where we're strong. Going to be working on B. Let's accept that A is probably going to be, you know, a decent win for Greenleaves when they're attacking, because the defense is what's going to be tough. When you're defending, you put your composition first. The attackers can then counter you how they want to. When Far East Society are attacking themselves, maybe they get lucky. Maybe Greenleaves are choosing a Ryan defense. Great, Sachuk's going to go into Ryan. That's the matchup that you want to play. But if they're not, you can find some way to still get past A. B is where the game is going to really count for both these teams, because once potentially Far East Society dig in their heels with B and make up for lost time on B, if they can win the game there, that's how they take map 2.
Exactly, right? And I think, again, it just comes into how really close this actually is. Like, we were just talking about how Control was comfortable for Far East Society, but it's just such a different beast to what we're going to get across the rest of the series. And I also feel just as time goes by here, I almost feel like Far East Society haven't been punished for things they should have been punished for. Like, we've already seen teams that are inflexible struggle over the last 2 seasons, and they somehow seem to have bucked that trend. But the buck stops now because this is the last time they'll even get to play it.
We'll see how they handle, assuming Far is going to be on the field, how they want to handle Hashimi again. Is it going to come down to more self-destruct kills? We saw Aros getting in there. We saw a lot of pressure against Hashimi, but that has to now continue for the rest of the series on every single map. And it's going to be a bunker double sniper defense coming online for Far East Society first. Greenleaves, once they spot this one, How do they want to proceed? Hashimi probably doesn't go far here knowing that there are 2 snipers on the other end. 10 is actually going to be sniping up first.
Makes sense, I suppose. They can also run triple DPS compositions. Sonaro also runs a very competent Wrecking Ball, so they've got some options. Still hovering over the soldier. There we go. There's the swap from Hashimi. So they're actually just going to decide to mirror plus a Sombra.
And I think not having Cloud on the lineup today, or at least for the first 2 maps as far as we can tell, puts 50 on this Ana pick. 50, if he's the designated flex support play today, that means you kind of lose out on your best Widowmaker for this particular matchup. We'll see how well they do. Hashimi is going to take the Red Evil super quick.
It forces out Fearless's res and also does adjust the positioning just a touch. I also really like the whole hook combo here. I like the Poppy's gone over onto the Roadhog, and so far both reses now down. Both Widowmakers pressured, but no one quite the better of it just yet.
And positioning is important here as well because Greenleaves needs to find some forward momentum. That one you can't res.
Yeah, that is a really important hold hook to come through. It does end up getting traded out, but you are going to miss that headshot potential out of 10, and Red Evil has a closer respawn. Double biotic grenades landing by the way here, but Greenleaves has suffering more from it. They are the ones who actually have to back off the point.
So this is where Greenleaves can actually go into respawn advantage as well. They got the closest spawn points. Red Evil on the Sombra, as you mentioned, is going to be running back now and should be joining his team very shortly. And in this 6v6, the good news for 10 is he doesn't have to take the 1v1 anymore, but also Red Evil can have a lot of flank pressure.
50 nearly got finished off there, which meant he actually took the attention of Xerathi. Sonaro goes down in that window, forces the res again from Xerathi, so nothing sort of gained either side so far, just near 2 minutes lost as finally ultimates come into play.
We need to see another whole combo. That one gets denied, unfortunately. Fire Society are not going to allow it to come through. Aros playing the D.Va is just going to absorb it, and Muton now, perhaps a Dragon Strike.
It is pretty nice. It does force Sonaro right out in the open. He couldn't rotate into where Pocky was because he was too exposed. Couldn't walk back to his team through the Dragon Strike. So Hon ends up setting up a very nice gambit for his team. It pays off, and they've forced Greenleaves back, at least for now.
And this is where for Greenleaves, okay, they are in a position to push in. First of all, because Red Evil's down. Not going to be able to res him because he's too far forward. Dragon Strike being available, also from long range, means you're not going to lose the ultimate to Aros. So Greenleaves, the time to be able to push has to happen now. Sonaro and Pocky nearing the ultimates as well. Time is also kind of running out, so if you see that they lose this push, which could happen, it's not going to be good news.
Xerafi's got a res, they've still got a barrier out, so they can still finish this. They can get back in the mix here, but it is a bit of a slowdown, and it's allowed Red Evil to rejoin.
And that's the timing error for Greenleaves, rather, because they had a 6v5 without EMP being a factor. EMP is a factor now, so as they want to go in, Red Evil could put a stop to the entire thing.
10 also finds a headshot onto Iris, so already in a tough spot where, again, a res ends up having to be committed, but here we go. The EMP in, the Dragon Strike across from Hon is brilliantly done. Greenleaves get absolutely destroyed, and he has now allowed himself to use 2 in the space of Hashimi, not even able to use the 1 he has charged up.
And this is going to be Greenleaves now really struggling because they don't have a lot of time left. Few more kills coming through is going to stagger the respawns. You lost a couple of ultimates, or really you haven't lost the big ones yet. Greenleaves are actually still in a pretty decent state. 4-1 final push on the 32nd now. 30 seconds remaining, I should probably say, but you felt like the last push should have been it. This one really has to be it now. This one you really can't make any more mistakes on.
They're already in this position because the first push took 2 whole minutes. It was the slow back and forth of teams maneuvering, playing a chess match, and unfortunately, when the clock is running, you don't need to even win the chess match if you are the defense. You just need to make the offense take long.
And because they haven't quite taken a tick yet, it's going to be difficult. They do trade in members. This is workable.
And it does also disrupt Fiery Society's positioning, and Greenies are able to take advantage. You see that in Pocky picking up a kill, but it's traded. Further trade still coming through as Aros goes down. Hon's getting some work done, though, and we're now approaching the point where it's just the supports left on the field here for Greenleaves. Xerafi desperately looking to find a res on someone else. It's not up for a long time. Goes down with the EMP out from Red Evil, and 34.4% is all Greenleaves will walk away from.
And now this is a huge problem for Greenleaves because this should have been the better point for them to operate on across the entirety of Volskaya. Now we're not going to see B at all, which is both good and bad in a way. Definitely, in the case of Fiery Society, you want to say it's going pretty incredibly well for them.
Pretty great.
They only need to now cap 34.4. And as the attackers, I mean, they have advantages in terms of choosing the correct compositions, getting the right matchups as well. on that A defense where, you know, in theory it'd be quite hard for them, but choosing the Orisa plus Diva, the double snipers here, they cover a lot of bases. They first of all remove the possibility of Hashimi being a big factor on the Pharah. We talked about removing Hashimi on Busan. This is how they're going to do it on Volskaya. Then you also have the Widowmaker matchup, which is pretty decent on defense with the shield. However, putting Red Neville then on the Sombra when he comes back allows you to get stuff like this done, where you can get a big team wipe on the Dragon Strike as well. EMP is a big factor. In fact, talking about EMPs, you also look at Greenleafs and think they probably could have run their own Sombra, because that's the other way you can really break the bunker. They only had one good push, like you mentioned, because they had a very long initial attempt, and then the further attempts kind of got blocked out very quickly. The big one was when they had that kill on the Red Neville, had a 6v5, lost that push slowly, and then Red Neville came back and did this.
I also want to say, when you look at that, when you see Red and Evil over on the Sombra, the one thing that Greenleafs do have to maybe lean on a little bit, it's not necessarily an advantage, but certainly Hon should have been getting shot to bits. Instead, he was one of the more impressive parts of Far East Society's defense. So now, rolling out on the offense, this will just be, I believe, a temporary Widowmaker from Satchok, and I'm curious as to what Far East Society will run.
I think Far East Society played around the shield pretty well. Satchok's shield on the Orisa there, so Hon pretty safe, and now Satchok's going to bring out the other shield. If he can play a Ryan matchup, he certainly will. There's not going to be a fire on defense, so they don't need to worry about the splash damage. They're somewhat concerned about flank pressure from Pocky and then double snipers, but if they play the 3-3 correctly, if they can get the rotation, they'll be in brawl range, and that's when Greenleafs are going to crumple.
They are running Iris on the Zenyatta. I feel like the Ana, especially when you only need to get a third, is higher impact with the sleep and the Biotic Grenade. You can create a lot more pick potential, but speaking of sleep, it's Red and Evil taking a nap, and Oshimi finds a headshot on Han. That's a lot of H's in that sentence. Now, Far East Society need to figure out what they want to do.
So that's ideal for Greenleafs now, because they've kind of split up this offense for Far East Society, where they're half rotated, but because they lose a member, they don't want to fully commit. That's a decent pickup themselves, but because they also lose Iris, the push is still kind of awkward. It's still kind of over until Far East Society can get all six together again.
And part of that is the fact that Xerathi has the res there. Even if they hadn't lost Iris and the res comes in, it allows Far East Society to regroup, because they now also have to wait for Iris. It just slows them down that little bit more.
And I think they may be looking at rotating on the other side instead. They're certainly grouping on that right end, or maybe they could just be getting all their members around, but so far the rotation is the most difficult part for them, because there is a lot of spam to deal with. There is also a timer as well. If Pocky gets the EMP, the push is also over. So Far East Society need to make sure this rotation here is going to be successful.
So then after this one, Pocky starts getting into the EMP. After that, you start looking at things. I mean, Dragon Strike's already going to be up, but it's not as big a tool earlier on. Sonaro takes a bit of pressure, but he's going to be okay for the time being. Far East Society taking the push. That's a Biotic Grenade. Nice connection onto Hashimi. Takes the Dragon Strike out of the mix early on. And Irish just going all in on the supports here. And that's probably going to be all she wrote for it. Far East Society find themselves the fight. They have a very clean engage. They have very clean execution. They end up getting the point. They only needed a third of it.
Absolutely calculated. That's the thing that was missing for Greenleafs on their own offense, and that's that when they were going for the final couple of pushes, especially the last one, because there was no point pressure in the fact that there wasn't a tick already there or two ticks there, where only one more 33% tick was required to cap. There just wasn't this pressure for Far East Society to address the point itself. They could look for kills. They could look for, more flank or poke pressure instead of focusing on the point. Whereas you look at this kind of push, this is where Far East Society say, if we make the rotation on the point, somebody has to address it. Scenario is already on the ground. Once your main tank's down there, you can take that brawl. If you don't, the cap's going to go. If you do, Scenario's going to get run over, which is exactly what happened. Iris finds a flank on the side to get a kill as well. Suddenly the whole damn bus open, and Greenleafs, their only real chance was to get more done on the rotation of Far East Society. If they can keep getting picks, build up an EMP, maybe swing in those ultimates once the EMP really starts charging up the rest of the team, that can be the fuller hold completed. But today, because A went so poorly for Greenleafs, it's going to go the way of Far East Society.
And this is a pretty prime position here for Far East Society. Remember, map differential regardless. As long as they win here, they're honestly in pretty safe standings. I believe they would be in grabbing distance of Nova MS, but Nova MS have a far harder matchup this week if they're going to pick up a win themselves. So really, Far East Society 2-0 up already. The worst case scenario, if they still win, is that it somehow goes all the way down to a 3-2. They still get themselves another map on the board. It still helps that map differential. And realistically, they are on track to get something more like a 3-1 or a 4-0.
And the other part is you start to look at the opposite. Now the 4-0 for Green Leaves no longer on the cards, which means they can't finish second anymore. They're still looking for a decent result, though. They can still maybe make a third or fourth happen, which is an improvement on fifth, but they have to do a lot of work coming back from the break, which is exactly what's going to happen now as Green Leaves go back to the drawing board for a potential reverse sweep. That'll happen right after this break.